Almost unthinkable for you moms out there. How can a mom lose custody of her child? I've got an expert here to discuss that with me today. It's about time we took this one on, Sid.
Yeah, it is.
You'll remember, perhaps from other videos, Sid Unrau, who is a licensed attorney here in the state of Utah, and also a certified Live on Purpose coach.
Absolutely.
Which is why we like to have conversations a lot.
Yes.
With the experience that we've both had in child custody cases, Sid, you've noticed some things that are risky, especially when it comes to today's topic. How can a mother lose custody of her child? Tell us where you're coming from on this, Sid, because I know that you've had some recent experiences that have taught you the 4 points that we're going to share in just a minute.
Yeah, I had a recent experience. I have a client who's a man who wanted custody from his ex-wife, and at first I thought this is going to be pretty impossible. Usually the court isn't going to go there. The court's going to say, well, let's see if we can rehabilitate mom. Let's see if we can just fix things. And it's mostly an enforcement issue, not a change custody issue. Because changing custody, frankly, is dramatic on the child. It's traumatic.
Right.
And it can be very difficult. And the transition from one household to the other can just be horrid. But the reasons that custody gets changed all came out. And I just want to mention, I realized as I was preparing for this and looking at this case that I just recently had, that I'd had one about 20 years ago, something like that, where a mother lost custody and she was my client. And I was doing everything I could to help her keep custody. And I realized that she had done exactly what this mother that we just beat in court had done. And that's why my former client lost custody, and that's why my new client, the man, won custody from a mother. I'm not trying to say that I think mothers are better than fathers as far as raising children are concerned, but once the children are set, it's usually in the best interest of the children to keep them where they are because it's so traumatic to change.
Well, that's the trend or what we would expect to see.
Yeah.
Basically in the courts. And I used to do child custody evaluations for the court. I've seen this from the psychological side. And so I'm curious, Sid, to see what these 4 points are that you came up with, because you said that they're consistent in both of these cases.
Yeah, and let me start out by just saying this is sort of a 0.0 of the 4. It's best if parents can just get along and co-parent. Or even they can't co-parent, if they can parallel parent, so that they aren't infringing on each other's rights, that they're supporting each other, that they're not putting the child in the middle, those kinds of things. It seems so simple. That's what we do when we're married, right?
Yeah.
We deal with our children, and we don't always agree on everything, but we overall agree, and our children have some kind of healthy opportunity to thrive.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Sid, because we've done some other videos here on the channel. You can go look them up. In fact, there's one that you and I did about winning child custody cases. It's something along those lines, but there's a link right up there in that corner of the video. Cue that up to watch next, and then you'll see some others in our custody playlist here on the channel. So you can go peruse around there, and we did one on co-parenting too.
Right.
So those resources are there for you. Tell us what you've learned about how a mother can lose custody.
Well, the first thing that just sticks out is that the mother is hyper-focused on the father. Instead of being focused on her own needs or her own behavior, she's focused on the father's behavior. And she absolutely exaggerates what's bad about the dad and absolutely exaggerates what's good about her. And that's just really horrible. And this sort of bleeds into another point. Kids pick up on this. They aren't neutral in this. The kids can tell when mom hates dad, and the kids can tell when dad hates mom. The kids can also tell when mom's trying to get along with dad. So focusing on dad and focusing on the negative, this bleeds over, and it gets back to dad. And if dad had no idea that things were bad, then I would have not been getting this case.
Right.
So that's what happens. So in this particular case, it was actually so extreme. Mom called DCFS on my guy, I think 7 or 8 times. And it was actually the 8th time DCFS said, hey, there's something weird here. So they actually started going after mom, which was helpful. But the point is, though, that if mom keeps focusing on dad so much and she can't see her own faults, then that's a problem.
Right. Now, Sid, you could tell that it was exaggerated.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell that it's exaggerated. The judge can tell that it's exaggerated. This does not bode well for someone to have such an inflated and negative opinion of the other parent. And can I just add also, as a child custody evaluator, this is something that I looked for a lot. Those children are going to struggle more if there are strong negative opinions held by either parent about the other parent.
Right, exactly.
And so you're saying this factor that has been consistent in the cases you've seen is an over or hyper focus on the other parent, and it tends to be negative.
Right. And this sort of leads to another point. This is about feedback in general. It took me a while to get this, but I was in a training one time when someone called me a jerk, and I had to think about it. Am I a jerk? And I thought, yeah, I can buy that. Sometimes I'm a jerk. Now, and then our trainer in that point said, if I hear that I'm a jerk from one person, well, whatever. But if I keep hearing it from different people, including people I just barely met, well, maybe there's something to it and I should look inside.
Better take a look.
What happened with both my client, the old client that we lost custody with, and this new client where I won custody from a mother, the court had told this mother over and over again, you need to improve. There's something wrong. She did not buy that feedback. The caseworkers, her friends.
Because she was so focused on the other
She was
parent.
so focused on my guy. So the point number 2 is, the mothers can lose custody by not noticing and not accepting that they're not perfect. And we can all improve by listening to our feedback and seeing where we can improve. If the mother had just listened to the court the first 6 or 7 times we were at court, maybe my client wouldn't have won custody from her.
So if she'd been humble enough to be open to the feedback about the improvements that she needed to make personally,
right,
that would have been far more productive than focusing on all of the perceived flaws of her ex-husband.
And I don't like to exaggerate, but I would say 1,000,000 times more productive.
1,000,000!
If she had simply,
there you have it.
If she had simply taken the advice and stopped calling out father every time she could, stop assuming that every time there was a bruise or something that dad must have beaten the child. Every time the daughter had trouble going to the bathroom, oh no, dad must have molested her. I mean, really? You and I both had kids. Things happen. We don't automatically think, oh, somebody did something to my child. That's why this happened.
Can I just reiterate also, we talked earlier about how you notice it, I notice it, the judge notices it, if it's an exaggeration. And that gets categorized in a place in the judge's mind that you don't want to be in.
Oh, yeah.
This irritates and annoys judges.
Oh, absolutely.
Have you noticed this?
Yes, and social workers and anybody else involved, and probably custody evaluators.
Oh, yeah. So it does not bode well for you. Anyway, I think we've made that point probably strong enough. What's number 3?
So the third point, and this is it slides right in here, don't use the children as pawns. Whether it's one child or multiple children, the child starts becoming a communicator. And there are 2 ways that this happens. One is directly. Talk to your dad. You'll have to ask your dad about that. Instead of doing the adult thing and having the parents talk about things like visitation arrangements and exactly pick up and drop off and exactly times and things like that. We have to let the children be children and not be the communicators. But the other way that they're used as pawns is completely accidentally. And that is, and I don't know if you would agree that this is a pawn thing, but this is how I sort of characterize it.
Okay.
Kids try to accommodate the feelings of the parent. In other words, if a child hears nothing except bad about dad, then when they come to dad's house, either they're trying to buy into that and make it worse, and I've seen that happen in several cases, or they're trying to defend. And so in that way, they're unwilling messengers or inadvertent messengers. And either way, they're pawns from my perspective. They're unfortunately in the position where they become the mediators, the mitigators. They try to fix things. And that's just really sad. Kids should be allowed to be kids. And it's different. When they're little bitty kids, it's one way. And when they're adult kids, they start getting into the argument, which also shouldn't be the case. And that can really ruin a case for a mother. If the judge ever finds out how the child feels and the judge can detect, hey, this child is getting this from mom, that's a real problem.
Sid, this can range from the more subtle versions of that, like what you've just pointed out, through very overt, very intentional alienation of the other parent. And that's even more destructive, but I think even the subtle forms, like you said, are going to put that child in an awkward position. And they will feel a need to protect and champion their parent. And often they feel a need to do that with the parent they feel is more vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly.
Less stable, perhaps. Again, not a category you want to find yourself in.
No, and I think kids want to fix things. And well, I think we all want to fix things that we see that we can. But kids want to fix things. When mom says negative things about dad or about a situation, and the kid knows that's not exactly right, the child gets in the middle one way or the other, either by confronting mom or by trying to help dad out. And it's just sad.
You know what? If you're still watching the video, some people turn us off by now.
Oh, yeah.
Sid, because they don't want to hear this. We're not going to lie to you.
No.
We're coming from decades of clinical and legal experience in the child custody area. Please consider what we're saying here. You're going to feel pulled into some dynamics that are not healthy for your kids. And that's where I'm coming from as a psychologist. Sid, something I've appreciated about you as an attorney is that you keep those kids' interest in mind too.
Oh, absolutely.
Where some attorneys that I've worked with, they're just out to win the battle.
Just a little comment about that. One time, as I was going into court to argue, it was a temporary custody issue, my client said, "Where should we sit?" And I said, "Oh, the good guys sit on this side." And implying, the bad guys sit on that side. The commissioner was on the bench and he said, "Mr. Unrau, in my court, the kids are the good guys." Yeah, that's true. So that sort of, that schooled me and that got me to help focus
Let's
in the right
get
way.
back to why we're doing this. Now, you've got one more point that I think we ought to make before we wrap up.
So this is probably one of the more basic ones, but obey court orders. This might seem like it's just the same thing, but it isn't. People who just simply ignore a court order, it just doesn't bode well with the court. Regardless of all the other things that you do right, if you just consistently disobey the court orders or disregard them. I have one client who is supposed to not get out of the car when her ex-husband comes and visits the children. They're supposed to meet at a certain place, not at a police station. I hate that. But they meet at a certain place, and the kids are just supposed to get out of the car. The youngest one is 7, so there's no reason the kids can't just get out of the car. Oh, she always gets out of the car and says a couple things to dad. And, and we've gone to court 2 or 3 times. I've warned her, this is not good. If dad's videotaping it. This is not good. It doesn't necessarily completely correspond to any of the other things that we said, although it does, it's in front of the children. But that's a disobedience of the court order. But other disobediences, other things that are more subtle disobediences. Yeah.
Which is, incidentally, against the law.
Right, exactly. The law is 2 ways. One is the legislature makes the law, and the other way is the court orders it. Either way, it's the law for you.
It is the law. And for you to ignore that could lose your case.
That's right.
For you.
Right, and if everything else is going for you, but you just won't obey the court order, you can lose custody.
I hope you got those 4 points. That's going to make a huge difference as you move forward. Take it from a couple of old experts. These things are important to pay attention to. There's other videos in the child custody playlist here on the channel that will give you some additional information. Share these videos with others that you think would benefit as well. Let's see if we can do a better job with our kids.
I saw her standing in the street alone. Her head was down, face locked onto the phone.